Namaste. Welcome to the Ilongga Yogi Podcast. My name is Kate. I'm from Iloilo City. I'm a certified yoga instructor and certified in mental health support. I share content on yoga, mindfulness, fitness, mental health, self-care, and healing. Before we get into it, I want to let you know that I teach classes at Molo Mansion. So if you're interested in taking a class with me, just head over to Healing Iloilo's Facebook page to book a class. Hello, it's been a long time, and I struggled with this episode for a while because I've been trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to talk about. Unlike before, whenever it would come time to record an episode, I would always have something that I wanted to focus on. I would have a topic in mind, maybe something has happened during that time of the month, or maybe there was a big learning that I discovered. So it used to be very easy to just record, come up with a script, come up with a theme, a topic, a title, all of that. But this time around, I don't know, I feel like it hasn't been that way. I've been feeling a bit like I don't want to talk. Like I don't want to talk or say anything really, and I think because a lot has happened again, like over the past few months since my last episode, and I think like I've been focused on, I guess, being more present in all of that and just being more active in all of my other obligations, that everything that had to do with Ilongga Yogi, whether it was like any sort of content, whether it was posting on Instagram or TikTok or any of that, like it kind of took a back seat a little bit. And at the same time, I feel like I'm not in this position to share as much anymore, because it's like I feel I don't know anything anymore, not in a bad way, but more of like, before I used to feel like I know the answer to most of my problems. It was like, I guess because I was at the I don't know how to explain it. Like I felt like I was at a point of my healing journey for a specific issue or a specific phase in my life, where I was slowly starting to overcome it, like outgrow it. So I was at a point where I was more aware and more I guess more experienced in that. And now I feel like I'm starting again. And so I feel like I don't know anything. It's like I'm stepping into a brand new phase of my life and I don't know anything at all. Like I'm learning as I go. And besides that, a lot has also happened in terms of like things that I've been keeping myself busy with over the past few months. For one, I got to join my first retreat. I've never like joined a retreat wherein like I didn't have, like, usually if I am part of a retreat, I have work to do. There's an exchange of work. This time around, I didn't have any exchange of work to do. All I needed to do was show up and be there and experience it. And it came at the perfect time, because this was the day after we had to submit something really, really important in terms of the org that I'm part of. So we have like this time during org work wherein it's called bid season, and it's like you create this bid or these bids, and they're kind of like it's almost like a mini thesis, honestly, wherein you have to write about, either depends on what your bid is about, but like you have to write, you have to create like this presentation type, like it's like a slide or a brochure. I don't know how to say it, but like basically there's graphics that are involved, and then a write-up that's involved. So it's really quite heavy. It's a lot to do, especially when like org work, which is what I am a part of, is purely like voluntary. It's not paid or anything. So this is like, it's just something that you are meant to do on your spare time. But with this type of org, there is no such thing as spare time because it's basically your life. But at the same time, it is also kind of like the culmination of everything that we do for that org. So, you know how we have projects and a lot of advocacies that we try to, what do you call this? Like, work on. I'm at a loss of words because it's been so long since I've sat down and recorded an episode. But anyway, so because of that, there is, it's like, this is the way we can present it to all the rest of our org chapters, and then for it to be recognized. Yes, so this is like the culmination of it all. So it's a pretty big deal. And so right before the retreat, I had like the first time that I ever experienced again after college. I had sleepless nights. So I basically would stay up until 4 a.m., 5 a.m. working on it, and then going asleep for a few hours, and then waking up and working on it again, because it really is a lot of work to do. And because it was my first time, so of course I was figuring it out as I went. But it was a really like interesting experience that nothing else can compare to it, because again, it also taught me a lot of things, which I want to talk about a little bit more later on. But basically, it was bid season, so it was like one of the busiest times in my life ever. Like, I can't even believe, like, I barely had time to do anything. It was crazy. My gosh. We all got sick after that because of it. Like, that's how intense it is. And then the day after, we had the retreat. And then not only that, but after the retreat, I had like a talk a day after that as well, after the retreat again. So it was like back to back to back activities. I could not believe that I made it through that, because it was really intense. Like, I barely had time to just like take a breath and relax, because really it was back to back. And after that, or not just after that, but besides all of that, I have been really preoccupied with housework. That's another thing that has really changed my perspective on things, to be honest, because it's like I never realized, like, it's like I knew. It's like, here's the thing. I know, and I have always been aware that the way I grew up, it was very spoiled, very privileged. Okay, like very, very privileged and very spoiled. And I get that it was because, you know, my family wanted to give me the best life possible and not go through what they went through, you know. And I think a lot of us Filipinos, and even just like a lot of kids out there and parents out there, can relate to that. That's something that we all want for our children, right? So that's a very common experience that we all have. And so I guess, like, I thought I was pretty independent and I was adjusted. I have been adjusted to like housework because I lived in Manila for college. So for a time, I have been used to doing my own housework. But again, it's very different when you live in a house compared to living like in a condo or a small apartment, because that's easier to manage and maintain. But when you have a house, that's a different story, especially when it's not a new house. There are a lot of things that you have to do. When you have dogs, that's another thing that I did not consider. But when you have like 5 dogs already, it's also a lot of work. Plus the fact that like I have other obligations, like I have my org work, I have my full-time job, I have my business, my yoga business. So it's a lot that I have to think about. And when you don't have any help, which right now I do not have any help at all, it's so much. It's very, very, it's it's a lot to do, because I'm someone who cannot function unless, the house is clean and tight and organized. So it's like before I do anything, everything has to be clean. But if it's not as clean as I want it to be, then I feel just so messed up in the head. Like I feel like I can't focus. I feel like I just want to get out, get away. It really affects me that way. So it's been quite an interesting journey to have to realize, for one, that I am way more privileged than I ever thought I was, and that now I literally am doing things that I never had to do in my life. And I guess that comes with marriage as well. So, heads up if you're not married yet, but that's something that I guess I didn't actually understand until I had to experience it myself. So, waking up and the first thing that I do now is just chores. I just do all the chores, and me and my husband, we already split the chores in half, and it's still so overwhelming because like he's the one who does all the cooking, I'm the one who does the cleaning. So I'm glad that I'm not responsible for the cooking as well, because I don't know how to cook. So he does the cooking. Like the household will go hungry if he doesn't cook anything, unless we just keep ordering, but that's too expensive too. So literally he's the one who feeds the whole household, and then I do the rest. And it's just like all that manual labor is so much and very tiring. And it just, I guess, puts everything into perspective. Like, my gosh, who am I to even complain at this point? So that's why, like, because of that, I feel like it really humbled me, just like all the housework that I have to do, all the new routine that I had to adjust to, because now I can't just like do whatever I want. I have to think of the house, I have to think of my dogs, I have to think of my husband, I have to think of like my work and all my other obligations. So it's like I can't just be selfish and think for myself. And I know that things will kind of follow that pattern, especially once we have kids. For sure, when that time comes, like I cannot just do whatever I want, because by then it all depends on, the kids and their schedule, their routine, their needs, their wants, not really ours anymore. So yeah, that's been like a huge slap on the face, and it really has humbled me. So that's why lately I just feel like I should be quiet. I don't feel like I have anything to say anymore, because I'm literally like kind of taking it all in. I'm at that phase of my life where I'm taking it all in. And because of that, how do I continue this, when I'm not in this like mindset of wanting to speak and open up and express myself, right? So it's just not, I guess, gonna work. And for me, I don't want to not do anything with this podcast. I don't want to have people waiting if ever people are waiting. I'm not saying that like that this podcast is that big of a deal that they're like waiting for an episode, but at the same time, it's like I feel like there's a reason why I feel like there's nothing much to say anymore. And that is why I titled this podcast episode as Closing This Chapter, because I kind of am at a point of my life now that I would like to close this chapter of this podcast. Oh, yeah. So it just made sense to me. When it first came to my mind, I thought about it, because I was like, why can't I just like record an episode? I've attempted to write down a script. Like I've made scripts already, a couple of scripts for a possible next episode, and every single time I just don't feel like recording. It doesn't feel like it's genuine enough for me, or authentic for me. So, for me, I'd rather not record an episode than force something when it's not authentic at all. That's just how I am. I want to be as authentic as possible. So if I don't feel like recording an episode is authentic enough to me, then I'm not going to do it. If I feel like a topic isn't my truth, then I'm not going to even try. That's kind of how I am. I don't like to do anything haphazardly. So when like the thought of possibly ending this podcast came to me, it felt like, you know what? I feel like that is the right decision to make, because I do feel like I'm not in that. I feel like I'm in a new chapter now. I feel like I'm not in that same phase I was when I first started recording this episode, not episode, but podcast. So season 1 debuted back in 2020. It was a pandemic baby, and it was something that I have been thinking about for many months and years before that. I've always wanted to do podcasts. I've always loved like listening to the radio and just like hearing people give advice and I love that so much. I remember when I was younger, I would just like fall asleep to the radio playing in my room, and I loved like just hearing the DJs and all. So I've always loved that kind of work. And so I wanted to have my own podcast where I can like talk about my experiences as well, and it felt like the right thing to do as well. So I debuted my podcast in 2020, and during this time I was again moving into a new chapter of my life. I stepped into a committed relationship. So back then, my husband now back then was my boyfriend, and so we stepped into a committed relationship during that time. And because I moved back to Iloilo in 2018, so it had already been 2 years of living in Iloilo, and I kind of felt like I had adjusted to the life in Iloilo. Like it took a while for me to find my group of friends, to find my footing, even though like it is my hometown and it is where my family is and lives. It's still an adjustment. So it was nice to feel like I felt like I was rooted already in Iloilo during that time. I felt comfortable being and living in Iloilo. Like there was no other place I could imagine myself, living in. And this was also the time that I transitioned into a more adult phase of my life, because I believe I was 29 during this time, I think, or 28, something like that. And I remember before 2020, before that year, for the holidays, I was in the States with my mom. And I remember like as I was preparing to fly back to the Philippines after my trip there, all I could think of was like working on my finances. Like that was the biggest goal I had for that year, for 2020. It was to work on my finances, finally like work on my savings, because I was very bad with that. Although like working on your savings during the pandemic is like the worst time to work on your savings, because we all needed our savings during that time. We all kind of used it up because of what was happening. But anyway, that was kind of when I committed to myself to finally prioritize my financials, and I really did. Like ever since then, I still practice all of the tools and things that I have learned during that time now at present. Listing down all of my expenses, tracking all my bills, tracking all of that, setting up savings, investments, insurance policies, all of that, health insurance, everything. So that it kind of started during that time. So I was really transitioning into this more adult life, adult phase, very late in my 20s. But, nevertheless, I was the most motivated and committed I have ever been. So I was really determined to secure my future. Like, all I thought about was my future from then on. And that, happens at different times in our lives. Some of us it may happen earlier. Some of us, it may even happen later than it did for me. But that's when it started to unfold for me. And so when I ended season 1, it was quite, it was a sad time, to be honest, because it was bittersweet actually, because it was a time when I got engaged and then got married. And I felt like that was the perfect time to start a new season because, I really was moving into a new season of my life. Finally, this married season, or my wifey era. So I was moving into marriage, but at the same time it was sad because before that a lot happened personally with my family, and so it was very painful, very traumatic, and very tragic at the same time. And so season 2 for me, because I had so much to share, because it was a time where I was really, really healing, and I was just soaking up everything that happened to me, and then kind of like looking back on my entire life and making an inventory of everything that has happened, everything that I've been through. So it was like a lot of unlearning and then relearning. It was a lot of letting go. It was a lot of surrendering. It was a lot of just figuring out life. And I needed that podcast as kind of like a friend, like a buddy through that time, because it was the only place where I got to share my heart with, and nowhere else did I get to do that. So it was so necessary, more than necessary, for me to heal and to get to where I am now. And season 2 truly was the biggest turning point in my life. And honestly, I am never the same. I am not close to who I was because of that time. And then so over the past couple of months, as I mentioned earlier, I've been really wanting to record an episode. I've been really, really wanting to do this, to sit down and just, make an episode. But for some reason, it just didn't feel right at all. I felt like I had nothing to say anymore. And like I mentioned, I just felt like life has really humbled me so much that it feels like everything I used to know, I don't actually know much about. Everything that I thought I was is actually not who I was at all. Everything that I thought was truth was actually not. So, everything changed. And because of that, I really do feel like it's time for me to move on, and that my life right now is asking for this change. It's asking me to step forward into a new chapter and to let go of where I used to be. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about my juice brand, Daily Greens. If you're in Iloilo City and looking for healthy juice that doesn't have any added sugar, no preservatives, and is packed with a variety of vegetables and fruits, then you should try Daily Greens. With 2 flavors, Greens Blend, a blend of 11 vegetables and fruits, and Carrots Blend, which is 50% carrots and a mix of other vegetables and fruits, this is unlike any other juice sold on the market. Most juices are packed with more fruits to help it taste better, but completely miss the point of being a nutritious and healthy drink. Remember, fruits are still filled with sugar and must be enjoyed in controlled portions. Daily Greens makes sure that you get the most out of a bottle, packing it with more vegetables than fruits and making it fresh, not to mention affordable for everyone. You can enjoy a bottle or 2 every day, which is perfect if your goal is to maintain healthy yet easy habits in the long run. You can order from Healthy Kitchen and Salads and Wraps. This is your sign to start building healthier habits in the most convenient way with Daily Greens. as I close this season, I just want to share my experience in the retreat that I mentioned earlier. This was a wellness retreat that I got to join, and it was at the Miras Hills, if you're familiar. And this focused on generational trauma. So it was a 2-day retreat. The first day was more on stress management, and the second day was more on generational trauma. So, of course, I preferred, generational trauma. And at the same time, it was perfect timing because, like I said, it was the day after we submitted our bids. So by that moment, I was free at last, at least for that time. And I experienced my first cacao ceremony. I've always been aware of, cacao ceremonies, but I've never got to experience it. So I didn't really know what it would feel like, what would really happen, I guess. And again, I knew that even though I didn't have any sleep, but I had to drive myself all the way there, I knew I needed to be there because I needed to just take a break from everything and recharge. And that was the perfect way to recharge. And this retreat allowed me to just let go of the life I knew before all of this. That life that right before season 2, and everything changed. It allowed me to make peace with that and to let go of it. Not only that, but it was everything just happened, just fell perfectly into place, because the bid season that I, went through and did, it made me realize how I don't acknowledge my own personal wins as much, because it happens so often. Honestly, I do these activities and talks. I get invited to all these things, and when I think about it, years ago, that was my dream, to be kind of recognized as somebody who, almost like a philanthropist, that's always been my dream. I've always wanted to be known as a humanitarian, somebody who spoke up about advocacies, someone who just dedicated their life to serving their community, all of that, and really speaking up about things that I have always been passionate about. That's been my dream. And I remember I've created multiple vision boards of just people like Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, that kind of picture, Angelina Jolie, Princess Diana. I've always dreamed of being like these women, and doing something similar. And then now I'm kind of living that life where I get to focus on my own little community, Iloilo. I have always loved Iloilo, and I've always been drawn to this place, and I've always wanted to stay here, even though technically I don't have to be in the Philippines or live in the Philippines. But it's been my choice to be here and to serve this community, knowing that this is the community that needs help, And so I never really took the time to acknowledge my wins, or really look at each one of them and see how much I actually have accomplished. And I think most of us don't really do that, because again, it's just a little awkward to do that. So it's not really something that we think about or prioritize. So that experience of bid writing, because one of my bids focused more, it was an individual or a solo bid, so of course it focused on the work that I've done, and made me see wow, I don't think I'm doing that bad. I think I'm doing pretty well given what I've been through and everything that has happened. I'm really doing good, and because of that, I found this new sense of confidence in myself and just security in myself. And then when the retreat came, that experience of doing a cacao ceremony, and then learning about generational trauma, that sometimes, how when you feel why does this always happen to me? Why I don't even, like, that's how I felt, especially as I was going through that traumatic experience with my family. I just felt like, what in the world did I do to deserve this? Like, why did this even happen to me when, like, I have done nothing but, I feel like, I've done nothing but good. I've tried my best to serve everyone around me. And so why did this happen to me? Why is this my reality right now? Am I being punished? Like, what is it? So, through the generational trauma retreat, I realized that it could be because, again, my previous ancestors, relatives probably have done things, in the past, way before I was even like, way before the thought of me existed or the possibility of me existed. And in a way, this is my purpose of healing. This is how I heal all of that, because of what I've been going through, and whether or not you want to believe in that, for me, it made me feel like all of this is not for nothing after all, and that's way, way better than feeling like I didn't deserve this. Now when I look at it, it's like, okay, that served a purpose. And I hope that whether I know what that purpose is or not, I hope that it did serve something, that it did do something good, whether it's for me or for previous generations. I just hope that it healed people, because I have learned so much from that experience too. So when season 2 happened, it was a lot of pain. It was a lot of pain and anger and just like nothing I've ever experienced in my life. And through this ceremony, it helped me make peace with that, accept it, and then forgive. Like, number 1 is to forgive myself and forgive everyone involved, no matter how painful it was, and just to let go of any sort of blame that I had, any hope of like wanting things to change. I let myself accept like where I am right now and how things have unfolded, and just like let it all go. So there's like this sense of trust that this happened for a reason and it served a purpose, and I trust that purpose, and I know that this is meant to bring me somewhere in the future, for whatever reason that may be. And so, not only that, but I stepped away from my family. I got engaged. I was married. I moved. I learned what it actually really meant to be fully independent, especially when you know that there's really no one you can run to anymore. Especially in my case, like I knew that I have to support myself now, like moving forward. I made this decision, and so I need to know how to take care of myself and support myself when the worst happens, because there's no one else I can lean on. And that kind of realization really like just changes you. You realize how hard you have to work. You realize how much you have to do now. And at the same time, how I have to put myself first and rely on nobody else but myself. But like not in a way where I will push people away, or where I will not let myself receive, just in a way that, I guess because before I was the total opposite. I always relied on other people and depended on other people, and so I felt like very naive and immature, because I felt like it's fine, like somebody's going to save me, somebody's going to rescue me anyway. So, and now realizing that that's not the case, and that's not true, and that's not something that I get to have for the rest of my life, just changed it all. And so, right now, as I am closing this chapter of my life, after experiencing, bid season and just like finding this new sense of confidence and strength that I didn't realize I had, And then learning to forgive, the people who I feel have hurt me so much, right? And people who I've hurt also, to be honest. I know that, and I am fully aware of that. I take responsibility for that. Learning to forgive them and forgive myself without any attachment, no expectations, no strings attached. I'm being able to come from a place where I know that there has to be consequences from my choices and my actions, and I accept those consequences. And I fully take ownership for what I have done and, what has happened and all of that. And so that really helped me forgive them without any strings attached, again, fully detached. And then moving into, that retreat of learning to heal myself and just like fully let go of it. In a way, like bury all of that behind now so I can finally step into a new chapter of my life. It just feels like now, as I say goodbye to this podcast for now, never say never. And as I leave this behind, I really am finally leaving behind this past version of myself, this version of myself who thought she knew it all, but she really didn't, who thought she was, who thought she knew who she was, but actually she really didn't, and thought she knew what was ahead of her, but actually had no clue at all. And so I'm moving into this new chapter now where I am so excited for all the new learnings, for this new beginning, this new life ahead of me, especially as I move into hopefully one day becoming a mother, having a family of my own, and just really saying goodbye and closing that chapter of my past. So that's it for today. Thank you so much, for just joining me in this journey from beginning to end. It's always so nice when people come up to me and mention how they've, heard an episode, or they listened to the podcast, or they found my yoga classes because of my podcast, or that they've invited me for a talk because they heard my podcast. So, like all of that, it has been really rewarding because like for me, each time I record an episode, I really do this for myself. I don't really do it for the numbers or for, for becoming, more popular or whatever. I don't do it for money because there is no money here. Like no one's paying me to do this. This is purely because I love just sharing my experiences and talking about what I've been through, and hopefully somebody being able to like hear that and also like, I guess, get something out of it, so this is really a passion project of mine. So like I really will never be able to let this go fully, but just know that if ever I do decide to come back, it'll be a new chapter, a new season, a whole different me, and this is just my way of saying goodbye and then letting it go and closing this chapter. So again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ilongga Yogi Podcast. I'll still be posting things online, so if you'd like similar content, then just check out my blog, all my socials, which will all be in the show notes. And as always, I'm wishing you peace in the body, peace in the mind, and peace in your heart wherever you are. Take care, and I'll talk again to you very soon.